You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 138. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We are so excited to have you here with us today. So, teaching self-regulation to our students allows them to manage their emotions and behaviors independently, which in turn makes classroom management easier and allows us to be more productive in the classroom. But teaching self-regulation can feel totally daunting. There's just so much information out there and lots of different advice on how to do it, but it can be so difficult to piece together all that information so that we can teach it in a step-by-step and coherent way without getting just kind of confused in all the information. So in this episode, we're going to break down self-regulation down to the basics and show you that it can actually be much easier to teach than you might think. Once you know the basics, you'll probably realize that you already have a lot of the skills and knowledge already to be able to confidently support your students in their emotional regulation journeys. We're also going to give you a step-by-step roadmap that you can follow to teach self-regulation to your students using the EduCalm method. So this is going to be a super useful episode. But before we get into it, we are so excited to share this week's sponsor. We recently heard from a community college professor who's been teaching for over 30 years. Her name is Ginny Haran, and she has seen students struggling more and more with college work and time management, despite all the advances in technology. Time management is actually the number one reason students drop out of college. She decided to teach her students how to use a paper planner to manage their time, and they said it was life-changing. By writing down their commitments and schedule by hand and being able to see their week, the paper planner tapped into visual learning and the brain activation that happens when we write rather than tap. She also wanted to provide college students tips and mindfulness and gratitude prompts each week, so she created the Centered Student Planner, which includes a link to a private video channel with college success tutorials. The CSP sold out last year despite the pandemic. It's an amazing tool for high school and college-bound students and a perfect graduation gift. Right now, they're offering a free printable booklet called The Go-To Guide to Finals when you sign up on their website at www.thecenteredstudentplanner.com. Again, that's www.thecenteredstudentplanner.com. And as always, you can find links to everything about this episode on our website, educalm.com, in our show notes. So if you ever forget where to find things, always go to our website for that. All right, let's get started.
Let's do this thing.
Self-regulation. I'm so excited.
This is one of our favorite topics, I feel like.
It really is. I feel like once I understood what self-regulation was, it was one of those things where like all the pieces of the puzzle just fell into place, and it just made more sense to me why teaching mindfulness in the classroom was helping my students, why doing all these little things that I was doing, why it was working. So yeah. I love talking about this topic.
The EduCalm classroom program, like in the long run, that's what it does. It teaches self-regulation. It gives the kids the tools they need to self-regulate.
Exactly.
So let's dive into this.
Yeah.
And let's first start by defining self-regulation.
Yes. So we're all on the same page.
And I'm actually going to just read a definition that we found just so that we all know where we're coming from, where we're our starting point. So emotional self-regulation, or also called emotion regulation, is the ability to respond to the ongoing demands of experience with a range of emotions in a manner that is socially tolerable and sufficiently flexible to permit spontaneous reactions, as well as the ability to delay spontaneous reactions as needed. That's a heavy
Yeah.
definition. So
It's a
break that
mouthful.
down.
Yeah.
Let's break that down.
Yeah. So basically, self-regulation is like the way that we would explain it is it's the ability to kind of recognize how you're feeling, what your emotions are, and then take the steps needed to be able to manage those emotions in a way that makes sense based on the situation that you're in. So an example of self-regulation would be, say I am feeling really overwhelmed and I can feel that sensation of feeling overwhelmed in my body. Maybe I feel unsettled. I feel kind of a tightness in my stomach, kind of like an uncomfortable energy in my chest. That's how I would describe the feeling. Now, if I'm feeling that feeling in the classroom, say it's the beginning of the day and I'm like walking into the classroom and I have to be on, I might not take the time to really like feel that emotion deeply. Instead, I might do a little exercise to kind of regulate that emotion, help to manage it. So bring those feelings, those energetic feelings in my body down so that I can perform in the way that I need to in my job.
In a proactive way instead of being reactive, right?
Yes, exactly. But on the flip side, say I'm feeling those same emotions and it's the end of the day and I'm walking into my house, a safe space. Well, then I might recognize that, okay, this is actually a great time to feel this emotion and maybe I need a good cry. And that's the regulation that makes sense in this situation.
This is the first piece to becoming a person who can do self-regulation.
Yes.
This is what you're talking about is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the beginning of teaching a child or an adolescent or even an adult to self-regulate is to teach them how to become self-aware. Mm-hmm. So first step, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the time when we're talking about self-regulation, what can feel, I guess, overwhelming for teachers is we kind of think of it coming from the problem and we're being reactive to the problem of, say, a big emotion, a meltdown. So when we're talking about self-regulation, we sometimes jump to teaching our students that, you know, when you're angry, when you're feeling this big anger, this giant emotion, here's what you can do to regulate that emotion. But that's kind of a reactive response. Instead, if we're teaching self-awareness, the ability and the skill of recognizing how our body feels and understanding that those sensations in our body are what is leading to an evolving emotional response, then we can start instead teaching our students to kind of recognize those signals in their body before it becomes a giant emotion and how can we manage it proactively rather than reactively.
Love it. And I think that it's like we tend as teachers to try to teach students, you know, that strategy to self-regulate, like you just explained. And on the flip side, we also try to teach them what emotions look like. Mm-hmm. But this self-awareness piece is kind of comes between those two pieces, right? Where when we're teaching, like often we're teaching what an emotion looks like, it's like an outward thing. It's like, okay, Kaylee, when you're angry, what does it look like? How do I recognize in you that you're angry? Right? But we forget this self-awareness piece that is the most important piece, that is to recognize in ourselves what it feels like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that really is a skill. And that's something that I only started to learn how to do when I was an adult.
Same here.
And that was through practicing yoga when we would be taught to do body scans in class or notice, you know, how we're feeling. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was such a eye-opening experience to be aware of how my body was feeling. Because I think most of us, we ignore our body signals for most of our life because it's
I feel like we were maybe even taught to ignore them in the generation that, like, you know, how we grew up.
You're feeling sad, suck it up. You're feeling upset, push through it. You're feeling tired, push through it.
Those are totally some of the messaging we would have gotten as kids.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you as our audience probably did as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So how do we teach self-awareness?
So I think that the best way to approach teaching self-awareness, which is this foundation to self-regulation, is to practice feeling the sensations in our body. And a great way to do that is with a mindfulness body scan. So basically what you're going to do with a mindfulness body scan is notice how your feet feel. Can you feel any sensations in your feet? Maybe you notice tingling. Maybe your feet feel relaxed or energetic. There's no right or wrong. Just really notice like it's the first time you've ever felt your feet, what they feel like. Now move up to your legs and notice how your legs feel. Notice any sensations you might feel in your legs. There's no right or wrong. Just notice whatever's there. Be curious. Now notice your belly and pay attention to how your belly feels. There's no right or wrong. Just notice whatever's there with openness and curiosity. Now notice your heart and the space around your heart. See if you can try to notice a new sensation there that you've never noticed before. Now notice your arms and your hands. Now notice your neck and your face. Now notice your entire body at once. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Exhale out of your mouth. And notice how you feel.
That was so relaxing.
I just dove right into mindfulness practice.
I was not expecting that.
Me neither.
Also, a tip for teachers who teach like kindergarten, grade 1, 2, don't ask it as a question.
Because they'll answer.
They will answer. So if you want them to answer, that's okay. It could actually spark great conversations. But if you just want them to take that minute where it's like silent in the room, don't ask it as a question in the form of a question. Yeah. Like, so what do you feel? Yeah. They will answer out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of saying, what do you notice in your feet? Just say, notice your feet.
Yes. And then you could also give examples like, notice if you feel a tingly sensation, notice if you feel, kind of giving them options, especially when they're younger like that, because they might not really understand what they're looking for. And it also, I think it's really hard for kids and even adults when they do this for the first time to actually be able to focus on that part of their body. It takes practice. Like I remember when I started doing body scans that I was like, I can't even, like, I don't know where my feet are right now, Yeah. As ridiculous as that sounds. Yeah.
Which is why in Educom Classroom, in the body scan practice that we have in one of the first units, I think it's the mindfulness unit, we say, imagine that your awareness is a flashlight. And we talk about pointing the flashlight of your awareness at your feet and then at your legs. So it gives them like something to imagine, which is pointing a flashlight at these different parts of the body. And that can be really helpful.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot in Educom Classroom. There's a lot of units and audio guided mindfulness practices that have like mini body scans in them just to like relax them before the actual lesson that they're going to learn as well. So it's kind of, sprinkled throughout. Yeah.
And the reason that it's sprinkled throughout is because our goal with Educom Classroom is to teach self-awareness and self-regulation. So it's something that keeps coming back over and over so that we can practice this skill of self-awareness, because it is a skill. I feel like it's taken me years to really get to the point that I have this like attunement with the sensations and feelings in my body, and that I don't get like surprised when I hit a phase where I'm really stressed, because I've felt that stress coming along. I've felt it building, but I never used to do that. I would just like get sick and then kind of trace it back and be like, oh yeah, I've been stressed for the past couple months. It makes sense that my body's kind of shutting itself down to force me to rest.
Yeah, like now we just have the tools we're self-aware enough that we realize what's going on in our body so we can make the changes as we go.
Yeah.
I actually am fascinated by how much better I've gotten at doing that over the last like 5-6 years. Like the recognition comes so much quicker.
Mm-hmm. And imagine now when we're teaching our students this in kindergarten.
I know.
Grade 1, grade
wish
2.
we would have learned this when we were that young.
Yeah.
They're so lucky.
Yeah, it's amazing. So now they're going to have this just ingrained self-awareness from doing these practices. That's going to lead to emotional regulation and emotional intelligence and hopefully more joy and compassion and fun in life.
Yeah. Now, a second way I would start with the body scan when you're teaching, starting to teach this to your students. Do the body scan. Repetition is key. You're probably all so tired of hearing us say that in every single episode, but like do it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And a second thing that we can teach our students is to learn how to observe their emotions as if they weren't happening to them. Mm-hmm. So this is also an entire unit that we have in Educalm Classroom called SelfAwareness and Emotions, where for the entirety of the unit, which is about a month long, students just learn how to observe and understand the emotions that come in and out of their bodies.
Which is something that is so like, you don't even realize that's possible before you start practicing mindfulness because you just think emotions are you.
Yeah, they just happen. They just come into your body. They just happen to you.
They happen and emotions are so overwhelming. You don't realize that it's something you can just observe. An emotion is just a sensation. It's just signals in your body that you can watch.
That's right.
So I like thinking of like watching as an adult. I like thinking of watching these emotions as though I'm like watching it on a TV screen. Like I'm watching it happen to me rather than like it being me.
Yeah.
But when we explain this to kids, we have a bunch of different ways that we do it in Educom Classroom.
This is for sure one of the favorite units ever. Like when we get testimonials, the kids they just ask for this unit.
Yeah.
Like all the time when the teacher gives a choice. But basically we are just teaching them to watch their emotions in different ways using elements of nature. So the first unit, and this is something you can do in your classroom, whether you use Educalm Classroom or not. The first audio is all about how emotions are like clouds in the sky. So do you want to explain that a bit further? How this works?
Yeah. So when we're explaining emotions to kids to allow them to have that, self-awareness piece and then also creating that space that then leads to self-regulation, which is then choosing a strategy when they observe the sensation, and then a strategy to manage that emotion is we can compare the emotions in our body to things in nature. So for example, emotions are like clouds in the sky. So our body is like the sky and our emotions are just the clouds moving through the sky. So we guide students through an exercise where they imagine themselves lying in the grass, comfortable in the grass, and watching the sky and observing these different clouds passing through their sky. And we explain throughout the practice in this imagination practice that some clouds move faster, some move slower, some are bigger, some are smaller, but no matter what, the clouds don't stay the same for long. They're always passing through. And the same is true with our emotions. When we're feeling an emotion, oftentimes we feel like we are that emotion and like
it'll never go away.
Yes, like it's stuck in us forever and it's overwhelming. But when we can take that step back and just observe the sensations that our body is feeling while we're experiencing that emotion, then we can also observe those sensations moving and changing and becoming different, just like we would observe clouds moving and changing in the sky. They don't stay the same.
And I really particularly like this analogy because we can actually get kids to picture really mean looking clouds, right? Like really angry looking clouds that are about to burst, right? Like dark gray clouds, and comparing it to anger. And then we can get them to think of these little white, beautiful, fluffy clouds, and comparing that to an emotion. And it's like so easy for them to compare because they actually have an idea of those changing clouds and what they actually visually look like. So it's really easy to compare to emotions.
Yeah. And we can really take this in so many directions afterwards to go deeper, like discussions that we can have about this of, what would an angry cloud look like? What does an angry cloud feel like in your body? Or representing it, writing about it, or doing art about it. Like there's so many directions you can go into to continue this conversation and this different way of observing emotions.
That's right. And even like with the clouds, we can even talk about, okay, what does it look like? Like, if you're having an angry cloud day, what does it look like? Which is that very first piece. But then also, what does it feel like to have that, to feel like you've got that angry cloud in your body, right?
And interestingly, being able to describe and notice how an emotion feels in our body is a really great way of regulating that emotion. So when students have practiced recognizing the feeling in their body and doing these body scans, when they are feeling a really big, overwhelming emotion, and they aren't quite at the point that they can self-regulate independently, we can help them to co-regulate by actually talking them through, okay, you're feeling a big emotion right now. How do your feet feel as you're feeling this big emotion? How do your legs feel as you're feeling this big emotion? And walking through the body scan, and as they're recognizing the feelings, the sensations, and explaining them, it's helping them to process those emotions. So it can also become a tool for managing.
All right. So I feel like we've already given a lot of information this episode so far. So I'm just wanting to recap what we've already said, because I do feel like maybe we went in kind of all over the place in our, in ideas.
Yeah.
But essentially the steps are, with teaching self-regulation, first we need to teach self-awareness. To teach self-awareness, we need to teach kids, first of all, what emotions look like. So if I'm looking at you, Kaylee, what does the emotion look like? So that would be the basic of this. Mm-hmm. But then the second step, which is often the forgotten step, is that we need to teach students what the emotion feels like. They need to learn what the emotion feels like in their bodies before they can learn to regulate.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like when we're talking about what the emotion looks like in other people, which is often how we talk about emotions, that's really more about emotional intelligence rather than emotional regulation.
That's right.
But it's usually taught as emotional regulation. I mean, it's obviously super helpful.
It's part of it.
But yeah, I would say that the feeling, what it feels like in your body, is the most important for self-regulation.
Now, super important though, we have to give our students lots of opportunities to have the chance to feel those emotions. It's not something we can just talk about and move on. It has to be put into practice. Repetition is key. I'm going to say it again and again. And ways that we can do this. First, the body scan, which we talked about, and then talking about how we can observe our emotions kind of from a more a spectator point of view. So we gave the one idea, which was looking at emotions like you're the sky and the clouds are the emotions in your sky. Now we have a lot more where that came from, but I think this episode is turning into a two-parter.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should wrap it up here so that listeners, you can digest this and what we talked about today. And I would encourage you to start actually practicing this yourself. Just doing check-ins, like how does my body feel right now? Especially in moments that you know create heightened emotions. So it's like, it's easier to feel these emotions when we are in a state where we feel emotions, right? So if you know that like, I don't know, going to your in-laws creates a little bit of anxiety, well, take the moment to like actually feel, what do the sensations feel like? Can you describe those sensations in your body? Or
do the body scan to see where the feelings are.
Yeah. And once you notice it in yourself, you'll be so much better at helping your students to discover that within their bodies. Because most emotion sensations are quite similar from person to person. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar. So, and then next episode, we'll get into the step by steps and the kind of tactical stuff.
Yeah. Like exactly how to teach them to manage those big emotions, to self-regulate on the spot and all of that whole, not being reactive in difficult situations or during big emotions. So let's do that next week, because I just feel like it feels like it'll be too much otherwise.
Yeah. Perfect.
So if you are interested in all of this, learning more about this, kind of getting into mindfulness with your students, teaching them self-awareness, try EduCalm Classroom. What's EduCalm Classroom? Let's talk about it.
EduCalm Classroom is our ready-to-use social emotional learning and mindfulness program for the classroom, created by teachers, us, for teachers. So it's a program that fits easily into your classroom routine and creates this routine of building self-awareness and self-regulation skills throughout the year. So you really see results in your classroom and in your students because it just becomes part of your day-to-day. So you can get the free trial by going to educalm.com and signing up for the free trial. That's going to give you unlimited free access to the first unit of our program, Introduction to Mindfulness, which gives you audios to play in your classroom and a bunch of other printable goodies that you'll discover once you're in there. It's also bilingual, so it's in English and in French.
And that's EduCalm, EduCalme. Calm is written in French.
Yes.
So that is your exit ticket for today.
Yes. Also, those audios are for all ages. So that means it's for you too, teachers. So if you really want to practice this, noticing your body and how it feels, that's all in the audios that come with the free trial. So listen to those for yourself. They're 2 or 5 minutes. You absolutely have time for that in your day.
Awesome. Hey, so we'll get back into this next time. So excited to continue this conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We appreciate you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you think would get value from it too.
Have an awesome week.
Bye.